At the time this is being recorded, we have 491 subscribers. So we may have 500 by the time we post this.
Yay!
Yay!
500 subs!
Congratulations.
It feels so small in the grand scheme of YouTube, but for us it's just like, oh my goodness, wow!
Yeah, it's an achievement regardless.
Yay. But yeah, thanks to all our supporters. We would be like so lost without them, especially our Discord community and patrons, of course. Our patrons are great.
Absolutely. Okay, so today we are joined by Theo, who
Hello.
I will be honest, I don't watch a lot of EFAP because all of their streams are like 5 hours long, and I'm like, I wish, but I ain't got time for that.
Yeah, I get that. Don't worry, I'm just some guy.
I think Alibi's watched or like skimmed through several of the EFAP streams though.
A few, like for a while there, I kind of got into it, but yeah, they are very long videos.
Yep.
Oh yes. They like to be exhaustive is the word,
And hey, I got nothing against that. Like, I fully support, have you seen our video, our content? I go super long all the time, so I think it's great. But yeah, I just don't have the time. So I'm just kind of like, I wish, but I'm sure I could glean so much interesting stuff from your guys' conversations. But 2 kids, do not sit around for 5 hours while you absorb a discussion.
Not too conducive to just, spending 5 hours or so to yourself.
I was telling Alibi just the other day, I tried watching an 8-minute video and I got interrupted 3 times. That's my life. So it never ceases to boggle my mind just how little uninterrupted time I really get these days. So I'm just like, you know what? They will grow. This is a phase. Yeah. Someday I will have my sanity back.
Just gotta survive.
There you go. No. All right. So, and today we are talking about retcons, right? That's basically our main topic. We're just gonna discuss
retcons and world building, pretty much.
Yeah. Basically story-related and world-building retcons in the Star Wars universe, because we talk about Star Wars. That's what we do.
Mostly the Clone Wars, because it's garbage.
Yeah. Oh, right. We are focusing specifically on retcons in TCW, yes? Yeah. Or are we just in general? Yeah. I think so, just TCW.
I think it'd be, if you start inviting rebels and whatnot to the conversation, it gets nightmarish really, really quickly.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, we're almost done our TCW reaction recordings.
So close.
But not quite there yet, and then we're going to start Rebels, and I'll finally get to see what all the fuss is about. Because I've just been saving. I'm like, you know what? I'll watch it when we get there and see what it's all about.
Yeah, same. I've been waiting for that rewatch.
That show is miserable, so good luck.
Thank you. And here, because originally I heard that it was better than TCW, so I was like, oh, thank goodness. But now more and more I've been hearing, no, it's just as bad, if not worse. And I'm like, it's no.
It's really weird because it's like a similar level of bad, if not a bit worse, but in completely different ways for the most part. For example, it's just a complete logistical nightmare constantly. A scene will never go by without there being some logistical issue with how things go, especially when the Empire is involved. Whereas at least the Clone Wars can sometimes get away with a scene where you don't object to everything that's happened.
It's true. There are those moments, and you're like, hey, see, they're capable of doing good, so why don't we get more good?
I think the good happens a lot by accident more than anything else.
That's what I'm guessing too. They say, a stopped clock is right twice a day. So.
There you go. Perfect analogy.
Okay, so what order do we want to do this in?
All the orders.
Made a little list.
Order 66.
You want to start with Order 66? Oh, no, because I asked for them. Okay, yeah, I'll show myself out. Even my son is like, Mom, really? Come on, what was it? You will have to put up with a little bit of pouting in the background. He's teething.
That's fine.
Tell the teeth no. No teeth.
He needs his teeth. I'm not going to tell them no.
So do we want to start with story related or start with world building?
Until we get to like the Jedi and Mortis, the world building ones seem like generally slightly smaller topics.
We might also hop around a little bit.
Because there'll definitely be overlap. Okay, so the first one is the ruination of the Republic and the crumbling of the Confederacy. So yeah, where to begin? That is like a huge one.
So here's a good initial question. Why don't they have like, armies? Because they seem to have like small degrees of military forces every now and then who are basically just guerrilla fighters, but no one's got an army except everyone's relying on the clones. It's really, really weird.
Huh.
Right, because didn't in the EU they had fighters from people's like different planets and things like that? Like, yeah, they had their own military, and the clones just kind of filled everything out a little bit.
Yeah, they were like a booster shot, I guess you could call it. They weren't, running literally the entire military operation alongside the Jedi. I don't really know how you could ever sell me on this in terms of like a world building perspective. How do we reach the point where absolutely none of our factions who are involved, because we don't really even know who the players are because of, the world building of the prequels. How do you get to the point where absolutely none of them have really much armed forces whatsoever to speak of? How does this happen in a galaxy?
Yeah, that is super weird. Huh.
Because, yeah, you could always, turn to conscription if enough people weren't signing up or something. And you'd expect in the Galactic War that eventually, especially when Sith Lord becomes Supreme Chancellor, he'd be like, you know what, conscription, it's a thing, let's do that.
Yeah, you might hope. I mean, like, not to sound like too much of a warmonger, hopefully, but, hope at least some of them were willing to, fight for the Republic if they believed in it whatsoever.
Yeah,
like,
because if you didn't believe in the Republic, why wouldn't you join the Separatists or become neutral? But instead, it's just... there's all these people there, but they're like, no, we're not actually gonna, invest in this, right? We'll just throw money toward clones.
Yeah, they all just sort of roll over in bed and be like, yeah, make the clones do it. I think the reason it is this way is so that we can, have the clones everywhere, but more importantly, so that we can have the Jedi with the clones everywhere, so, which means we can have our main cast go wherever they need to be within the war without upsetting anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what it comes down to. 3 Jedi won the war.
Yeah.
They were everywhere all the time. Every single major event. Look, there's Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka.
That's crazy.
Wow.
They showed up to another huge major event? No way.
What a coincidence. It really shrank the universe.
Absolutely.
Pretty dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a trend that's gotten worse. Like, you'll like that in Rebels. The universe gets even smaller. There are certain characters who have met everyone and seen everything there ever is to see.
Oh my goodness.
But even as far back as this, right? Like, because we even have the recurring cast that shows up all the time. We end up with the point that it feels like every planet they go to or whatever is just like a different colored rock for the same set of characters to go about their thing on.
Oh, wonderful.
A different backdrop for the same cast.
Like, it's part of the reason why it feels like fan fiction, right? Because what do you do when you write a fan fiction? You're like, oh, I want my character to meet this important person and that important person and see this important site and be present for that important thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just fun to kind of like live it all vicariously through your character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're wish fulfillmenting.
Yeah. And if it is a fan fiction, I got no problem with that. But when you're like, no, this is official canon because we're, a big franchise, and it's like, no, do better.
It's embarrassing.
Absolutely.
So part of the point, was the removal of nuance.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when is it the first time they try and sell you on, hey, not all of the Separatists are bad? It's in like season 3, isn't it?
Yeah, season 3,
the first
episode
and only
10.
time.
Heroes on both sides.
Oh yeah, that's the horrible arc where they start trying to talk about funding more clones as well, isn't it? I think that's what's going on Republic side, like Padme and Bail are like
that's what
fighting
Padme
about.
and such are up against, and then they go to Mina Bonteri to get the separatists to agree to peace negotiations, but then meanwhile Grievous is setting off a bomb. And so then they're like, no, we just need to push through a thing for more clones.
Yep. Yeah. This is balked from so many different angles that it's hard to like really begin to approach. Because first off, this is a smaller thing, but the actual number of clones they give in Attack of the Clones, for a galaxy-spanning force, it's really not much. I think it was in the millions, which is, for a galaxy, that's kind of peanuts.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Which leaves you in this really awkward spot of, and especially come TCW when it appears they're doing literally everything in terms of the military alongside the Jedi. So you have to wonder how that's tenable. And then we're sort of told that the Republic is bankrupt, which I don't have too much difficulty believing. Mm-hmm. I guess I could like prod and ask where the money went, like onto what, but
all the clones.
Yeah, the clones that Dooku bankrolled.
Right.
But the bigger problem is, it's like a politics problem. I don't really understand the sides in this conflict. Like, Bail makes a fairly reasonable argument of, you know, we can't afford this. This is, like, bad. We need to pursue diplomatic means of resolving the conflict or whatever. But then the show instead tries to focus on Padme's, like, moral argument about it, which you have to wonder what Padme thinks is going to happen if they just don't get more clones and allow the likes of Count Dooku and General Grievous to just keep doing what they're doing. Because they try to play the, you know, the sis isn't that bad, and so on and so forth kind of angle. That's really hard to do with the stuff that Grievous and Dooku get up to in this series.
Oh, even small characters, like in the Lerman episodes in season 1, the guy is flat out just like, yeah, let's just test our weapon by wiping out these like peaceful natives.
Yeah, and so for every time they start showing you like the good cis people, you have to start wondering, like, those people are aligned with Grievous as he does this. Like, maybe they don't know, sure, but I feel like it'd be kind of hard to not know when every other arc about either Grievous or Dooku or some villain of the week showing up to a planet and just deciding, yeah, let's test our weapons on the local populace, or let's drive them out of their homes, or destroy them, or enslave them, or something like that. It's just like, what does Padme think is going to happen if you just let them keep doing their thing? Like, sure, you can talk to the good people, but at the end of the day, Dooku's the one in charge.
And she knows that. Like, they even say that in the episode, that Padme's like, oh yeah, no, I forgot that you, like, admire Dooku and blah, blah, blah. And I think Mina responds something like, oh, you know, he's just the leader of the Senate and blah, blah, blah. Oh, man. But yeah, Padme should know, like, he's in charge. So if you just kind of do nothing to combat this situation, eventually it'll overrun you.
Yeah, I know you probably don't want to be Padme, but you are at war, and you kind of need soldiers to fight a war, and apparently nobody's signing up. It's just the clones. So the clones are like your only real option. So I find it really weird in terms of how they... Well, it's again, I don't know how things got to this point galactically. I don't know how we got to a situation where it's like, okay, we have to pay for more clones. That's the only thing we can do. We also don't have the money for it because the money's somewhere else. But also, not all of the Confederate peoples are bad, but also they all have fealty or admiration or something to someone who is really bad.
Yeah, they're either bad or they're stupid. Is what it boils down to.
The clear stakes and like ideals on either side are really not defined, so it's really hard to get a read of the actual conflict and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true.
This is just like a small side thing. Like, I don't expect Star Wars to necessarily explain this, but you mentioned how Grievous was like setting bombs on Coruscant and stuff to like sabotage the peace talks and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird thing in Star Wars. Like, how does a war even work? How can Grievous just do that? I guess he just hyperspaces in some droids or whatever, or just smuggles them onto their planet and they just get there. But
they were disguised as cleaner droids, so he wasn't actually there. He just sent them, and then
how did they get there? And every episode or arc starts with ships basically just like showing up to a planet because hyperspace works that way. So how do you fight? How does a war end up being fought when hyperspace is a thing? Again, like this is a real like tough question to answer, so I don't really expect them to have too good of an answer, but it gets confusing when you think about it. When ships can just, when entire fleets even can just show up to whatever planet they want, really. How do you?
The Younglings arc in season 5 is like really bad for that. Because literally Obi-Wan's just floating around in the middle of nowhere doing nothing. And then Grievous just pops out right beside him. And they start fighting.
Yep.
And it's like what?
What is this? What just happened?
And, I mean, even Ahsoka, like their ship gets attacked by the pirates because they're for some reason floating through the pirates' space instead of, going through light speed back to Coruscant.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a good
literally
idea?
just so the plot can happen. It's so dumb.
It's
just
space, it's big, come on!
Feels like the writers aren't thinking too much in terms of the grand scheme of things, because the show was episodic, so they just want their episodes to happen, or their mini arcs to happen, which to an extent, fair enough, but a modicum of thought would be nice, especially in instances like the ones you just mentioned.
Yeah, no, it's one of the weaknesses of it being an anthology.
So the next one on the list is inhibiting good writing. So it's talking about the inclusion of the brain chips and General Order 66 shenanigans.
Oh boy. The brain chips are great because they exist to solve a problem that the Clone Wars created, right? Because they wanted to have clone characters, which kind of... It didn't necessitate it, but I guess in the writing room they thought it necessitated making the clones more individualistic than they were perhaps implied to be before.
I have heard that, in Legends, the clones were actually given, more individuality, but it was done well as opposed to the trash in TCW.
Yeah, I remember hearing that, Arc troopers and stuff were specifically genetically changed to be more independent than your regular rank and file clone.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Which makes it weird.
Yeah, it would have worked. If Rex was more individual, but then all the other guys were just, rank and file soldiers, then it would work. But every single you really see it in the Umbara arc, that every single clone has this individuality.
And they have close, friendly relationships with the Jedi around them most of the time. I don't know, outside of Krell, I don't know if we ever get an instance of a Jedi being either dismissive or mistreating the clones around them. It's always a really positive relationship, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's we're expendable,
no
not to me,
Yeah.
It's because it's a kids show, so we want our friendly band of comrades and whatever going off to do the good or whatever. We've forgotten we're in Star Wars and these clones are all going to shoot all of the Jedi later.
Yeah, I know. Why weren't they thinking of that ahead of time, or did they always plan to just throw something in there to force the clones?
There's no way the inhibitor chips were something that was planned in the writing room really far ahead of time, as far as I'm concerned.
They don't even show up until season 6.
Yeah.
And season 6 wasn't even going to air. It had canceled at the end of season 5, and season 6 only aired on Netflix.
Really feels like someone had just woken up, slapped their forehead, and gone, "Guys, Order 66 is a thing that happens. How do we get, say, for example, 5s to shoot Ahsoka? How does that happen? Because they like each other, they're friends.
And everyone went, oh, yeah.
Oh, whoopsie daisy.
That is a problem.
And we can't do it by just, having the characters change or whatever, or just follow their orders to the Republic over whatever personal attachments they have, because that would make them bad guys, when we don't really want to make Rex and Fives and whatnot bad guys, so we're not allowed to do that.
You?
Which just leaves you... Yeah, you just have to make something up on the spot that just forces them to do it, which removes a lot of nuance from the idea of the conflict of what might have been happening. It's really drastically less interesting if they were just, there's a switch in their head that forces them to do it.
Yeah, they were all good, and then they were all bad against their will. So they're still good.
They're not actually morally accountable, it's fine. No one is.
And I mean, I feel like even though it would still be a retcon, they could have done it in a way that wasn't complete hogwash. And I would have been like, you know what? I don't care for the fact that it's a retcon, but they had established this about the clones, and then they needed to tie up that loose end, so then they wrote this thing, but hey, it all makes internal, logic and consistency and everything like that, so kudos to them. But, no, they didn't do that! It's so ham-fisted! It's just come on.
It's far from an impossible setup to make work kind of compellingly, but they did it about as poorly as they possibly could, especially because of the way the arc in which we first are introduced to the inhibitor chips goes. Because Fives uncovers the entire conspiracy and is in a room with Anakin. It's so crazy how they allowed that to happen.
Oh, man. And then, he just doesn't say what he needs to say.
Yeah, he has to be too crazy and do the weird talking game, because he's crazy. So he can't talk straight. Just because he cannot say anything, or nothing in the future of all of Star Wars can happen.
Literally, they always write themselves into a corner.
I understand it's quite a lot of constraints to write around something that is coming. You have a history that is established and a future that is established by all the films, but you can do so much better than this. It just feels
like you said, just don't have Anakin there.
Yes.
Right? He gets caught in the middle of nowhere, trying to get to Anakin or something.
Yeah.
End of story.
Maybe a clone who he is friendly with or something is vaguely hearing him out and he still can't say it all properly or whatever, but something like that. But you have to keep anyone who is in Revenge of the Sith so far away from this. I mean, the Jedi should not know about these chips. I don't think...
No, because they essentially do, and they just go, well, that's sus. Better not do anything about that.
Palpatine spins some spiel about how, this clone's chip went haywire, which means because the chip went bad, he turned around and killed the nearest Jedi. It's do we want to look into this at all? And because the prequel trilogy Jedi and the Clone Wars Jedi are who they are, they have minus 50 intelligence. They just completely declined to look into it at all. I remember this is a slightly later thing. This is when they find out that Dooku is Tyrannus, and so Dooku is the one who funded the clones. They say they can't look into it because it would cause unrest. This is another world building problem. I don't really understand what they mean by that. What kind of unrest is going to be caused by a quiet Jedi probe into what's going on with the clones?
Exactly. It's so dumb.
But it is this way because they know that things have to get to Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. Oh, it's infuriating.
You couldn't just have it be that the Jedi are trying to look into things, but, they're too late. Maybe you could spin it that way, but I don't know, for some reason we just have them all sit on their hands, because that's all the prequel trilogy Jedi ever do.
The Revenge of the Sith Jedi look even stupider, because rather than being completely blindsided by this thing, someone somewhere's going, darn it, I guess we should have looked into that.
Yoda and Mace and all of them just sitting around maybe we should have looked into the fact that the army that we were gifted and sort of forced into command of was paid for by our enemies, and they have these weird chips in their head that when they malfunction cause them to kill Jedi. Maybe we should have looked into any of this whatsoever.
But
darn, they were busy with something else, I guess.
Oh yes, very busy. They have their origami class, and can't miss that.
Because, again,
Absolutely.
yeah, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka are the only ones off fighting the war, so the rest of them are probably just chilling at the Jedi Temple all the time.
Pretty much every time we see Mace or Yoda, they're just sitting around.
Literally!
Basically, yeah.
I don't think they do actually have anything to do. I think they just sit around and play video games for their days.
Occasionally, we see them via hologram rather than in person in the council room. But yeah, what they're up to, no one can say. Maybe they've just got a bowling league that's currently taking place on Tatooine. Who knows?
There you go.
Yeah, they've got shit to do. It's fine. From what I understand, yeah, the chips were made up by Clone Wars as well, right? Because basically everything to do with how the clones are is changed from how things were previously established to be to Clone Wars.
Yeah.
All the ranks, all the different levels of cloning and such like that. It's all fun basically.
The ranks weren't just ranks as such. They were different specifications of clone. Because I remember reading that ARC troopers, for example, they were specifically bred differently. And then you get to is it fives? Yeah, fives just gets promoted to ARC trooper kind of flippantly on the spot. Because he's a protagonist in the show, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, you did a good job, so we're promoting you.
Same deal that Ahsoka gets all the time is she is the protagonist character in the show and it's for children, so we want to end it on a happy note. And so they get the good thing, which is a promotion.
Hooray!
Yay!
Good for them, I guess.
Okay, so next one is the Zygerria Arc. I don't think there's too much to say about that one.
I was just about to look it up. I haven't read all the comics that correspond to those episodes, but I did read the one for the middle episode, the Slaves of the Republic episode, and they do take exact moments and exact dialogue and everything. They basically just adapted it, but then changed
a bunch of stupid details, like what the Zygerrians look like and what Ahsoka was wearing, and stupid little stuff like that. Filoni seems to love doing that.
It just makes me curious as to why the changes were made. I don't know that they necessarily strictly make things better or worse, because I haven't read the comic in question. I imagine they made them worse because Filoni's a hack, but if it's just change for change's sake, I don't know. It seems kind of arbitrary. But if it's change that actually accomplishes something, then we're still kind of out of luck because we haven't accomplished anything that made the show good. And a lot of the same problems are there.
Yeah, no, actually, one of the changes they made was that instead of Ahsoka choosing to wear the rather immodest outfit because things had gotten kind of desperate and she really needed to sell it in order to make the plan work, then she kind of decided that on her own. Anakin didn't know she was going to do that. But in the show, then they forced Ahsoka to wear that outfit against her will.
That's really uncomfortable.
Yeah!
Especially because I don't want to linger on this too long just because it's really uncomfortable. You remember that one shot in one of those episodes that opens with just her bare thigh taking up half the screen?
It's so gross.
It's really weird, dude.
Don't do that. Why would you do that? So it was they changed the Zygerrians themselves as well as a couple other character designs. They also changed the time frame. Originally the comic was set earlier in the war, whereas in TCW it takes place a lot later. And then in the comic they had Asajj Ventress show up, but then they omitted her because she'd been exiled from the Separatists in the previous season.
Yeah. And
in the comic, the Separatists are involved in the Battle of Kadavo, whereas in the comic, I believe it's mostly just the Zygerrians. And then, there's a few character swaps, it says, but
Makes
otherwise,
me wonder, the idea of it being earlier or later in the war, ideally that would be something that the show would be able to represent, right? Because I don't know if you guys feel the same, but to me it's really hard, especially when it was told out of chronological order. It was really, really hard to tell when exactly in the war anything was happening, because the war doesn't seem to like progress in any particular direction. It's just there is a war going on, and stuff happens in that war. The Republic like seems to be losing, but basically all we ever see them do, because we're following the protagonists, is win really hard. So I don't really know what the status of things is. Like every other episode is they've secured some critical planet, or they've won over some faction, or they've defeated Grievous, or they've defeated some other fleet, and we never really see them suffer really heavy losses outside of the occasional scene, maybe back at the Senate, where the Senate supports more warmongering as they perceive it, rather than pursuing peaceful line of resolution or whatever. So I don't really know what's going on in the war at any point. Which side is winning, and what is actually happening out there?
Yeah, the timeline is like near impossible to follow if you really stop to think about it.
I actually went through, because I've got the list in chronological order on an Excel spreadsheet, and I marked all the episodes that are not in order. And there's actually only like 17 that are out of order, and most of them are within seasons 1, 2, 3. Seasons 4 and 5 and 6 basically all happen in order, and then season 7, the Bad Batch arc technically takes place after the Martez sister arc, but like it's barely enough. It barely makes a difference.
Yeah.
So the reality is that the episodic order isn't out of chronological order very much. But you still have that feeling of what the heck is going on? And there's enough episodes that are kind of like, wasn't that person dead?
Yeah, exactly.
And now suddenly they're in this episode, and then it mixes you up a lot more and just kind of like totally screws with your head, and you have no idea what's going on or what you can expect or anything like that.
It's the same kind of problem the prequels themselves had, right? Where they sort of dabbled into politics, but they didn't really want to tell you too much about the actual state of the galaxy, like how things are organized. Like it's not like the OT, which gets to be really nice and simple because it's the first thing. There's a big empire, it's evil, and then there is a rebel faction, they are good. There's a few planets we visit, and it's pretty clear the state of affairs. With the PT, it's much harder to glean what the actual way things are set up is, because we're told a lot about bureaucracy, but we don't see a lot of bureaucracy other than, people shouting in the Senate like once or twice maybe. And that extends through then to the war, especially because the war takes place almost completely off screen, like in Attack of the Clones. It's
understandable because it's not about the war, it's about Anakin, but I totally understand what you mean. It's like, wait a minute, wasn't something supposed to be happening?
It makes it a really big problem when you then make a show that chronicles the war, because it'd be an interesting question to go and ask Lucas or the rest of the team behind Revenge of the Sith. If they had in mind what the actual state of things was by Revenge of the Sith, because the Sith has just launched this attack on Coruscant, right? Like, is this a desperate last ploy, or is this like they have almost won? They're besieging the capital, they're going to win the war or whatever.
Yeah, because why wouldn't they have done it sooner if they were able to?
That's the thing, because it comes back to hyperspace travel and stuff being a thing. Could they not have just done this whenever? What was stopping them?
Right.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. Okay.
Yeah, me neither.
I guess it was one of those situations where I kind of like you said, either they were close or it was a last ditch attempt or something, but I never actually consciously formulated that question and thought through it.
Because, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but the fight we see in Revenge of the Sith and like the very opening of the film it's really, really chaotic. It has this sense about it that this was a complete like cluster of nonsense that was not supposed to go down the way it did, and it's like completely disordered and chaotic.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the vibe I get. Maybe it was just George Lucas and whoever else wanting to play around with special effects, and they weren't thinking too hard about what they were conveying with that. But I'm happy to be charitable. So it says to me that this was sort of like a last-ditch sneak attack sort of thing that they attempted, and then the Republic just sort of hastily called in whoever the heck was on standby to try and like triage the situation and make it so that everything doesn't go wrong.
The other thing is maybe Palpatine was just kind of like, okay, Coruscant is off limits for most of the time, and then he's like, okay, guys, come kidnap me now.
Yeah, maybe it was.
But
just
that's
like
me making up reasons. But we don't get that answer.
It's not completely untenable. It gets weird when you think of how Palpatine ends up escaping from Grievous's ship, because his survival was not guaranteed. Like a crash landing in half a ship as this frail old man.
Yeah.
I would love to know what was going through his head through some of those sections.
Same.
Like, mate, this wasn't part of the plan. I shouldn't have put my life in these people's hands.
Oh no, Alibi and I have said a couple times on our reaction series that it's like, it'd be awesome to get some content that is focused on Palpatine from his point of view or whatever, and you get to see these moments where he's like, okay, do I just say to heck with it and use my powers to defend myself, or do I just cross my fingers and hope that these people save my life?
Well, they're Jedi, they'll pull it off, right? Right? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Palpatine's easily the most interesting thing about the prequels, so I would agree with that. That would be neat.
I wouldn't want to see it anymore because it would require Disney writers to write well. So
point.
At this point, it's just a.
There you go. Let him be. Let him be.
Leave him alone. Good. If they announce something like that, I'm gonna be like, I ain't watching it because you're just gonna dash all my hopes.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in Rise of Skywalker, and they somehow managed to make him like not fun in that film, which is pretty incredible because the character was just fun.
Especially in the prequels too.
Yeah. Regarding the war, I wish we had some indication of whether or not the concern that, because it informs how arcs like these progress in terms of like, do we need more clones, or like how important is what's happening here. It informs a lot about the stakes and the tension of what's going on politically, and sometimes with just our action hero protagonists, because if I need to know if them losing actually means a damn thing, or if things are just going to keep proceeding the way they always have. Because things seem to just keep going no matter what, regardless of who wins or who loses in each given arc. So you start to just sort of wonder what the point of everything is.
Yeah, it just takes you out of the story.
Yeah.
It's like, why should I be invested in this? Because nothing has consequences.
Because it's a kid's show, and it was sort of like decided to be episodic at the start, or at least I'm honestly not sure. Do you think it like wanted to be episodic at the start, and they quickly realized it was making it impossible to write consistent characterization, or do you think it was just an idea that they dropped because they had like higher ambitions or whatever?
Oh, who even knows?
I don't have a clue. Basically, the only thing I've really read is that going into season 4, George was starting to back off a bit more, kind of like, oh, you guys got this. And so then they started to make it, well, more about Ahsoka, but also they started to get darker in terms of like the tone, the atmosphere. And so then you've got less Jar Jar, if any Jar Jar. I don't remember how much he shows up after that. And then less politics so that you can have more like action and drama and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
So that's the only thing I've really read that kind of changed as the seasons progressed. But you do definitely notice, I think, there's more arcs rather than just like smaller episodes. At least I think so. It feels that way for sure. Like there's like 4 or 5 episode long arcs rather than the like, maybe 2, 3 at most episode arcs you
Yep.
get like before that.
I think it was around when, sorry, I can't say his name, like, probably Savage Oppress started showing up. Dude, it was
The naming. It's
Great names. Totally.
it was around when he showed up that I started to notice we're pretty much going from arc to arc with
Yeah.
the occasional like single episode between. So that was like midway through season 3, somewhat late into season 3. Yeah, his first showing up with all of the stuff with the Nightsisters was
That's in season 3,
early.
yeah. Yeah, that is in season 3.
Okay, yeah.
I'm mostly happy with being unhappy with Zygerria. It just seems like a whole bunch of change for the sake of change.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what
It's just
any
a
of it
lot of
accomplishes.
little things that are like, okay, but why did you need to change that?
Yeah,
What
it's
did
like
you
changing-
gain
completely
from changing
inconsequential.
that?
Changing the designs of the aliens, for example, like
Mhm.
It's just why?
I'm not sure.
Why?
Yeah, is this limitations of the engine or the CG artists or something? I have to imagine they've got some pretty talented people working on it. So like, I mean, maybe they're not being given good direction, but I'm sure that like, the people who are like behind all of this stuff are very talented and if given the right environment could flourish. Just get them away from Filoni, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Filoni just poisons everything.
Sadly.
Yep.
So moving on to our next point.
That's the Bad Batch arc.
Yeah, so I think again it's kind of a mess of like several small things. I think one of the biggest things is the fact that you've got Padme and Anakin in contact when in Revenge of the Sith she sees him and she's like, I thought you were dead because I haven't talked to you in like like they clearly weren't in communication in Revenge of the Sith, but then in the Bad Batch arc they're just, oh, we just talk to each other, a couple days every week, just little secretly chatted up via hologram. Holograph words. Brain.
Aren't the Jedi not supposed to have attachments? Really makes you think. Because like, if he's sneaking away to do this every couple of weeks or something, I don't know.
Yeah, it basically like comes down to, was Anakin trying to be Jedi-ish? Was he focusing on what he was out to do? Or was he like, nah, I gotta go call my girlfriend?
Just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, basically. Just like no conflict there at all. It was just like, no, she's my wife, I gotta talk to her. And
Sure seems like he's like supposed to be conflicted, but maybe he's not thinking about it too clearly at that point. But that's just reminded me of another like small brainwave to skip back a bit. Jedi clearly have attachments with all of the clones.
Right.
Like the entire attachments thing is nonsense and you can't really think about it because all of the Jedi have friends. They're all friends with each other. They would be upset if one another died and whatnot, or like were disfortuned or whatever. So that rule can't really exist and you can't really pay any attention to it in any way that allows you to know what's going on in a character's head. Because Obi-Wan's around all the time as well, like quipping at Anakin, and Anakin's quipping back. Like, what's Obi-Wan thinking? Because he's like a proper Jedi. Is he thinking, oh man, I'm getting kind of attached to this guy who I go on loads of missions with?
He straight up called Anakin his brother.
Yeah. I imagine they want it to be like sort of fixations. Like Jedi shouldn't be like, or like the Jedi shouldn't allow attachments to obscure their clear judgment. I'm sure that's the sort of thing they were angling at, but presentationally that's not what they actually gave us, because
I think it's
sorry, go on.
In Avatar The Last Airbender, basically he kind of has this situation where he has to relinquish his attachments, but there it's kind of presented as like basically what that means is he can't try to control what happens with them, like what they do and such like that. It's not that he can't enjoy their presence or anything like that, but if it comes down to it, he just kind of has to say, okay, well, that's that, and move on with his life. So that's the way I kind of view it for the Jedi as well. And so yeah, you can have friends, but kind of like with Luminara and Barriss in Weapons Factory, when Barriss and Ahsoka get buried under all the rubble, Luminara's like, well, hey, it sucks, but I gotta be okay to let her go and just keep going. And so I think she's kind of portraying, what that it's not that she's completely standoffish toward Barriss at all times, like I cannot be friendly towards you in any way, shape, or form. It's just that, okay, this has happened, I can't control that, so moving on.
Yeah, it's like vaguely stoic sort of philosophy, which it's completely fine when put that way. I think that's actually a good way to take it from what we saw in the OT as well, because as I said, I'm very much an OT purist. I'll only really listen to what the OT has to say in terms of how things work. But then you look at how they treat Anakin, and Anakin's expressing concern over the fate of his mother, and Yoda basically just tells him, hey, you shouldn't be thinking about that. If you think about that, you're going to go to the dark side. You got to stop. Basically just tells him to get over it. It's really, really annoying to watch.
It's questionable. The Jedi are questionable sometimes.
Rather a lot.
Yeah.
It's especially questionable when you contrast it with Yoda's treatment of Ahsoka in a very similar situation, where Ahsoka is like fearing for Padme because of visions she's been having
apparently,
and then Yoda is really, really supportive and helpful the entire time.
Yeah.
Not to the Chosen One though, just to Ahsoka.
Ahsoka is the Chosen One. Let's just accept that at this point, that is going to be revealed someday. That, it was Ahsoka all along.
The new Ahsoka show. That's what's gonna happen. They're gonna do some nonsense. I'm ready for it.
I'm not watching it.
Me neither. What? If I can avoid it, I will not watch it.
I've been duped into watching it with the EFAP gang, and so that's what I'm doing later on today.
Have fun.
I'm sure I will.
It's fun watching people talk crap about it. That's certainly fun for me.
This is true. The people in our Discord server are already like, so this happened. Can we just agree that this is garbage? Oh dear.
We did get a little sidetracked though.
Yes, the Siege of Mandalore Arc, basically. We could talk about the Ahsoka novel retcons in general, I guess. I mean, I know there's a bunch of, the Tales of the Jedi also retconned several things Filoni kind of used the Tales of the Jedi as TCW Season 8.
Yep.
So, in a sense, it's kind of part of TCW.
Yeah,
but yeah, again, it's like he just made changes for the sake of making changes, or maybe just for the sake of giving Ahsoka more she's so special treatment.
I wonder if in the novel they kept the bit in the beginning where for some reason the camera gives Ahsoka the moral high ground when she's telling Anakin and Obi-Wan to come and help her rather than going to defend Coruscant.
You've read the Ahsoka novel, right? Alibi?
I skimmed through it at one point.
Do you by any chance remember that scene?
No, actually I don't.
Okay, because now I'm super curious. I want to look it up, but that'll take too long.
I remember when prepping that they removed some of the warmth from Ahsoka's parting farewell with Anakin and stuff.
I think I vaguely remember that.
Rather than having a slightly longer exchange, Anakin just sort of says good luck, hands over her lightsabers, and then, pieces out.
Yeah, so reading off of Wikipedia here, it says, in the novel, Ahsoka's last conversation with Anakin is him warning her about how dangerous Maul is, but in Old Friends Not Forgotten, their last conversation is them wishing each other luck and discussing the changes Anakin made to her lightsabers. And the lightsabers themselves are now blue, whereas in the novel, it has them with their original green and yellow-green. And again, it's one of those changes that it's like, why would you change the color?
Because what does it accomplish?
It's it's almost like he wants to give her every color of lightsaber throughout some point. Because she's
'cause
had yellow and green and white and blue, and it's like, this is getting a little ridiculous.
How long before she's getting a purple one?
She's not allowed to have Samuel L. Jackson's purple lightsaber. It is not allowed.
True. I know Filoni. She'll get her hands on one.
Oh,
yeah,
probably.
I just don't understand it. It's a really small thing, but it's really vexing for that reason, because it doesn't really make any sense as a change, because they're presumably like adapting from the novel, so they would have to specifically know to change it.
Okay, I'll just keep reading points here. Ahsoka's last duel with Maul during the siege in the novel takes place in a plaza in Sundari. Their conversation is an exchange of insults regarding her departure from the Jedi and him only being half a Sith. Maul is captured when Ahsoka lures him into a ray shield that her allies activate. But in the show, their final duel takes place on the support beams of the biodome, and their conversation is about Maul's earlier offer for them to team up. And even though Ahsoka is disarmed, she captures Maul by knocking him off a beam and suspending him in midair with the Force. And then Rex arrives and they capture him.
Ahsoka is really cool, you guys. Like, that's the underwriting thing behind all of those changes.
Yeah, literally.
Rather
it just
than...
makes her more of a Mary Sue.
Yep. Rather than baiting a victory by, trapping him and, baiting him.
No, she literally beats him in one-on-one. While
beats
disarmed.
Him straight up. Yeah, it's whatever. And then suspends him in air with the Force. Like... And also changing the conversation from them lobbing insults at each other to Maul trying to recruit Ahsoka. Because again, everyone must like Ahsoka. Everyone is interested in being friends with Ahsoka or having Ahsoka on their team.
Yeah.
Nauseating.
So, and then in the novel, Maul addresses Ahsoka as Lady Tano because that's what he overheard from the clone troopers. But in the show, the clones insist on calling her Commander, even though she's no longer a Jedi Commander. I think he just calls her Ahsoka Tano in the show.
I'd love to know how this battalion of clones was allowed to go off and do this while Coruscant is directly under attack and the Chancellor's been kidnapped.
Oh, well, literally. You see, they promoted Rex, and so then, he could just go do that.
He just went off and did whatever. It's fine.
And then, even despite being promoted, he's just in the background for the rest of the arc. Ahsoka's clearly the one in charge.
Yep. No, but she was just there as an advisor.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's
why they all call her Commander.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So mad. I hate it.
So.
And then she got them all killed. So that was nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very nice of her.
You guys have to come and help me because otherwise you're abandoning these poor people and but you guys are just disposable. So when I need to be saved, I'ma just let loose this,
I'm just gonna set Maul on you.
Yeah.
That's totally chill, right?
But I'm not because he did it. She's not responsible.
Yeah,
the show doesn't seem to think she's morally culpable for that because she's like, she has that barbed remark when she lets him free. It was like, I'm not responsible for what you do. Sort of implications there. It's like, yes, you are. You let him go.
And everything you told him to do that, basically.
Yes. Go cause chaos. Those were her literal words.
Do you know what he's going to do by causing chaos, Ahsoka?
Definitely not kill anyone, because she wouldn't want that.
And I cannot believe how the fans are just like, she's perfectly not to be held accountable for this.
The mental gymnastics.
They got duped by the camera's perspective, because the show thinks she's fine.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They don't seem to question her actions any deeper.
The brainwashing in TCW is real.
Yes.
It's just insane. When you look at it and ignore what the narrative is trying to make you think, it's insane how opposite the actual like content is. Like, Ahsoka is so bad. Because I know a lot of people have mentioned that how often like Anakin and Obi-Wan or other Jedi are like basically how often there's like war crimes being committed, but I'm not as well versed on that, so I haven't really like looked at that. But yeah, I'm sure if you just watch through everything with taking the narrative lens off, it would just be awful.
The easy one for the war crimes is the fake surrenders, because Anakin pulls that how many times in total? It's at least twice, I know. I think he does it more, though.
I think, like, Obi-Wan starts off the movie by doing a fake surrender.
Oh, excellent. And there's a very good reason you don't do fake surrenders, and that's because if you ever try to surrender again after fake surrendering, they're not going to accept it anymore. Because they can't. Who's to say you're not just going to start shooting them again? Mm-hmm. Which means you've ruined it for everyone.
Yeah,
forever.
Like, because it's TCW,
completely
Of
irresponsible.
course, there's no consequences.
Yeah, it's an incredibly irresponsible thing to do. That's exactly the right word for it.
Yeah.
No one can ever surrender again because of these actions. Like, not like straight away, of course. Like, one incident's not going to do that, but they're certainly not going to let you surrender ever again. So if ever you're in a tight spot again, Anakin is now responsible for the deaths of himself and every clone under his command. You could have just been prisoners of war.
Yeah, no,
good job! Yay!
But the show doesn't understand
heroes,
that
everyone.
because the show doesn't get it, because to them it's just like, look at this clever trick Anakin did to get out of a tight spot, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible.
Is it wrong for me to expect more from writers at that level in their career? Like,
It's embarrassing.
yeah, like you'd think you'd do at least maybe a little bit of research into war crimes, seeing as you're writing about war.
It feels almost first drafty. Like,
It
someone like
does.
Filoni just churned this out and then maybe read through it once but didn't really think about it. He was just like chuffed, I guess, like pleased with what he'd done. And nobody really thought about what they had just written and what they were then putting to screen. And anyone who did think about it, I guess, just wasn't in a position to do anything about it.
Yeah, he called Ahsoka a religious experience, and look how that's turned out so far.
You didn't hear that? Rosaria Dawson tweeted several months ago that she'd talked to Dave Filoni after he'd watched the first episode of this new Ahsoka show, and he called it a religious experience.
Dude, that's so weird.
It
The way
is!
he talks about this character is so fucking freaky.
It is!
Oh my goodness, I just cannot, like, really, buddy? Like, that's okay.
I understand, like, quite liking something you've created as, like, a creative or whatnot. Sure, I guess, but you're taking it really, really far.
Yeah, it's just
Especially-
Usually when I
weird
look back
obsession.
on, like, stuff I've done, I'm like, oh my goodness, I thought that was good. It's garbage.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not going like, oh, look at this. It's
I've
like,
been there, because
feel like I'm just like, wow. The
Both in, like-
ego you have to call your own work a religious experience.
Hold on.
I'm exactly the same boat. Sometimes when I look back at something I've written or drawn or whatever, like a while back, it's just like, oh god, I thought this was good. I showed this to people. Oh no.
Yeah, like we're always learning. So then you look back and you're like, oh, I could have done this better. I could have done that better, right? But this guy looks at his own work and he's just like, oh. It's like,
I'm gonna
okay.
cut him some slack that isn't really slack. I'm sure it really is quite the experience to get to bend probably the biggest IP in the world, or like certainly one of them, all around your OC.
That
Like-
is a fair point.
My man got to write his fan fiction, and it's just real.
And it's canon. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a very good point.
Mhm.
He got to put his character in the universe and make her the center of it. He won.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
no,
he won the
it went
lottery.
straight to his head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that.
But definitely, yeah, there's a lot of like, it feels very first draft.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
one of the biggest examples that comes to my mind is when Ahsoka in season 3, episode 4, when she goes to help Senator Chuchi, and she asks Anakin that she's allowed to do this by herself, and he's like, okay, and then she's like, aren't you gonna help me? It's like,
literally
did they
seconds
not?
apart.
And yeah, it's like, did nobody notice this in the writing phase, in the voice acting phase, in the there's lots of opportunities, like the editing phase. Nobody looked at that and was like, huh, that's a direct contradiction less than 30 seconds apart.
Surely this is not hard to not do. A good example that comes to my mind of the first draftiness is some hilarious tone deafness in, it was the arc in season 3, the one where they're arguing about funding more clones again. I remember the resolution of that arc has, after Padme talks to one of her handmaidens, I can't remember the character's name.
Tekla.
Tekla. The conversation leads with Tekla basically heaping praise onto Padme for being so in touch with, what the people are feeling and whatnot, and how much she cares. And then Padme's very first response is, "Thank you. Anyway, what is going on back on Naboo?" It's. I wonder if they understood how that comes across, because that's the sort of thing you put in political satire, right?
Right.
Like, man, you're such a good leader. You really understand what's going on. It's like, yes, thank you. Now, what's going on back at home? And then the very first thing Padme does with this information is take this person to the Senate and just parade her around for political capital. Like, to get everyone on her side. Just like, hey, look at this person. And not one person in the Senate points out, like, hey, isn't that one of your people? Your responsibility? Like, I understand we're a republic here, but we're each responsible to our own citizens.
Right, I never even thought of that. Oh my goodness!
It's so tone deaf.
Yeah, because basically our focus has kind of become Ahsoka, because that's what the fans in our comment sections kind of pushed against, and so then we started to dig a little deeper, and I mean, she takes up at least half of the series, because she's in about 65 episodes, and there's 133 in total, and so it's kind of time consuming just to look at her solely. And so I tend to forget about all the other stuff.
I don't blame you. She is a piece of work.
Understatement.
But there's so much. There is so much. It's not like, oh, Ahsoka's bad, but the rest of TCW is okay. It's like, no, it's all garbage. She's just, a really, really big part of it, because she's Filoni's OC. Yep. And so then he slowly made it all about her.
We have gotten sidetracked again, though. So
no, we never get sidetracked.
No, never.
Not even once.
Okay, another point for. So the novel didn't show the execution of Order 66, but it's hinted that Maul takes the opportunity to escape in the chaos, and Ahsoka is forced to choose between killing him or saving Rex, and she opts for saving Rex.
It's not surprising that was taken out, because we can't have Ahsoka actually make difficult decisions.
No.
Yep.
No.
Always need to be having our cake and eating it too.
Yep. Yeah, so instead she releases Maul and saves Rex, so that she can save Rex. Oh, yeah.
So dumb.
So I'm guessing, because it says it's implied that Order 66 happens quite soon after the end of the siege, so I'm guessing that all happens on Mandalore. Yeah, it says, well, they're all still on Mandalore. And rather than when they're in a ship in the middle of hyperspace.
I'm again curious why the change was made. Is it for the set piece of, Maul ripping the ship apart? Is it to, get a change of scenery or whatever?
But it sure is convenient that the ship happens to crash land on a planet that just happens to be there and has breathable air and everything like that, right? Because if he just ripped it apart in the middle of hyperspace, sure, he would have maybe still gotten on that ship and gotten away, but Ahsoka'd be dead.
Yep, we got really, really lucky by having just the most habitable rock that they happened to crash into, and we all survived the crash too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
just
no,
has
just her and
insane
Rex.
plot armor.
I remembered another one. This is slightly skipping ahead in the arc, but there was the thing with Ahsoka's lightsabers as well, right? Because I always laugh about this at the end of the show, how she only leaves one of her lightsabers.
Mm-hmm.
And she's got two. And the idea of this is supposed to be like either faking her death or like whatever symbolic gesture this is supposed to be. The fact that she kept one of her lightsabers is really weird. And it's made especially weird because in Rebels, she's in Rebels, as I'm sure you know, she doesn't use the lightsaber she kept. She's using two new ones that she got from an Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So where'd the little short lightsaber go?
Yeah, that's another retcon. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's saying that, yeah, in the novel, Rex fakes his death by burying another clone in his armor and marking the grave with a headstone claiming that they killed each other. And
It's a pretty clever trick. I'm kind of sad to see it gone. Like, just
And
making
then-
use of the fact that clones are clones. Sorry, go on.
yeah, and then Ahsoka leaves both her lightsabers there to seal the deception, and then she leaves as well. But yeah, instead in the show, he just keeps his armor and his like everything, because like they have a whole bunch of graves, but they like mark them with the guy's helmets. It's like, so just have Rex put like his helmet on one of them. I don't know, like something, anything. And then yeah, she keeps one of her lightsabers, and it's like,
And then
what?
isn't using it the next time we see her. So it just, I guess it just vanished into the ether.
Yup.
Oh.
It makes me think that someone honestly just forgot that she uses two of them, which doesn't make any sense, but that's the only way I can rationalize why that kind of change would exist. Is someone just forgot that she uses two lightsabers.
Oh
Yeah,
dear.
not the first time they just forgot things.
No. Okay, so that's basically all the story related kind of retcons we had marked down, the big ones. So I guess let's move on to the world building retcons. We've already discussed the troopers, like the different clone
Yeah.
designations and how that was all turned upside down. And Theo, you had a point about the Jedi kind of being in charge of the clones on an organizational level.
This one annoys the hell out of me. I do want to go back to the different clone types just quickly because it's actually connected.
That makes sense.
Imagine for a second, because in the previous works, the clones, there's different kinds of them bred for and like genetically altered for different parts of the war waging process. Like they're designed to do different things. So theoretically, amongst this, you could easily have clone commanders. Instead, however, the people in charge are like sparse Republic admirals who appear from time to time, but they, alongside the clones, are 100% deferential to the Jedi for some reason. Like, completely on an organizational level. If there is a Jedi around, the Jedi outranks whoever the clone or admiral or whatever is in the room, and that person will then defer to the Jedi, which is a really strange way of doing things when Mace Windu.
Oh, dear.
You know,
He dies by flying out a window, so...
I mean,
yeah. Like, Mace told us explicitly in Attack of the Clones that the Jedi are not soldiers. They're this sort of weird peacekeepery thing. Exactly what they do isn't made clear, but they seem to be something between like a police force and diplomats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like, I can accept that. Right up until the point that they start becoming like integral to the war, and they are the people in charge of waging it.
Yeah.
Like, below only Palpatine himself, seemingly.
They're not going there, like, they're not going along as negotiators to, like, try and keep peace. They go as, like, generals who are leading and strategizing the attacks and everything like that. And like you just said, the army commanders will defer to them, even to Ahsoka, who's, like, 14 years old at the start of the war. Just because she's a Jedi.
Yep.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
I have no idea why it is this way. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. I know why it is this way, and it's so that we can have, like, the main characters be in charge. And so we can have them, like, be everywhere, and also so that we don't have to invent some new, like, faction or whatever, or new characters. And I hear prequels fans or like Clone Wars fans offer all sorts of responses to this, including the main one being it is this way because, you know, Palpatine wanted it to be this way because he wants to discredit the Jedi. But that sort of ties into the wider web of the complete chaos that is how this war is the way that it is. Because the Jedi should be able to refuse, because there should be someone else there who can, like, wage the war. But somehow there isn't. So somehow, apparently, the Jedi are forced into just acting as military commanders. I'm sure the Jedi know loads about logistics. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm sure they are fantastic at getting, like, 50,000 blasters and a bunch of clones to the right planets that need them on time, and like just to keep the wheels of war moving, as it were. There's no way they're any good at that sort of thing, so why are they doing it? A clone could easily be educated on this sort of stuff because they are literally made for war and taught only war as they grow up.
Yeah.
The clones would be so much better than them at this job, but they are in charge of the clones for some reason. And they're apparently good at it for some reason. When does a Jedi have time to know how to tactically navigate a situation or know how to breach a blockade or whatever in a space fleet? When does a Jedi get to figuring out these things?
Yeah, no, it's funny because so many fans claim that TCW fixes the prequels, but it really just makes them worse.
Yep.
Because it makes the Jedi look so bad, and it also makes the Republic look stupid, and it makes the universe as a whole feel smaller, and it's just thing after thing after thing after thing that's like, no, TCW has ruined the prequels.
Yeah, they take already existing problems with the prequels and things that you can like bone pick the prequels, and it just makes all of them worse. Because you can like question why we have Yoda out here directing artillery fire in Attack of the Clones. Like, that seems kind of strange. But, you know, whatever. Maybe this is like a one-off thing. Maybe circumstances. Geonosis was like weird. But then we go to Clone Wars and they're just in charge all the time, constantly. And they're also constantly out there in the field with clones, leading them. So I guess they're just in charge on an institutional level for some reason.
Yeah. And it's right from the very beginning of the war too. Like you do not see any gradual progression across the show of this becoming a thing, even though it wasn't before. It's just right away. Nope, Jedi outrank everybody. They're leading the war, and while calling themselves peacekeepers.
If it was written better, so the Jedi do like get sort of forced into accepting this position. And then, as the show goes on, I don't know, we see more and more Republic admirals and fleet commanders showing up. Just Republic people who are in charge, and then you see them start butting heads with the Jedi, and then we see, like, the Chancellor start favoring them over the Jedi, maybe, as part of showing, you know, things building towards the Jedi getting phased out and building towards Order 66. That would have been some kind of neat way of showing the progression of the war, but that would involve thinking a bit too much about how the world is constructed, I guess, for them. So, yeah, because it's a kid's show.
They don't seem to have really planned for any progression. I think, like you said, at the beginning, it was just like, oh, let's write a story about this. Oh, let's write a story about... And they weren't really thinking bigger picture.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, I kind of understand it, like, because Alibi and I have a analysis series, like, where we're kind of rewriting Ahsoka's episodes, and I'll admit, yeah, at the beginning we were just going episode by episode. We didn't have really a big plan in place that would stretch across the seasons, even though we kind of already had the show itself to kind of build off of. And so in that sense, you know what, I get it. Right? You start, you don't know how long it's going to be, what you're going to have an opportunity to do. Everyone's just kind of figuring out this brand new thing because Star Wars had never done this before. So in that sense, I can cut them some slack. But at the same time, it's also like, but you guys are like professionals. And this is a huge franchise. You've got tons of money. You can't sit down and maybe plan at least like the first 3 seasons to kind of have this like bigger picture idea in mind, and then when you realize, hey, this is going well, like maybe we'll do more. Though from what I've heard, it never really did do very well.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe they always thought they were going to be canceled. And so then it was just kind of like, well, I guess we'll just do something and see what happens.
I think you're onto something very important there. 'Cause I don't think it's a lot to ask them to have some consideration for Revenge of the Sith in mind, because they know Revenge of the Sith comes after this.
Yeah.
So you'd want whatever you write to flow quite easily into Revenge of the Sith, which it just doesn't because of change after change after change after change, not the least of which being all of the stuff that...
7, and it just mangles the timeline for Revenge of the Sith.
Somehow Ahsoka was in the Zoom call with them all while they were, standing around in her ship and everything. And then Mace talks to her specifically. Yep. I don't know why she was invited to that call, but I guess she was.
That is a very good question that we are all asking.
Why is she ever invited anywhere? Oh yeah, because plot. Okay, so the next point on our list was talking about Ryloth.
I think Ryloth was included because, again, it's a world building change. Basically, in the EU, I believe that Ryloth was, I think they say, it was a tidally locked planet, meaning that one side always faced the sun and one side always faced away, and the planet therefore had no day-night cycle. And thus they also had wildly different climates, with the star-facing side being scorched by constant exposure to the sun, and the side facing away from the star was home to a vibrant biosphere. And normally this would be impossible because that side would be so cold that any life would freeze. However, powerful heat storms would blow through from the sun side, and that way it was able to sustain life on the cold side. But in TCW, it's just got a normal day-night cycle, and there's no mention of the exotic flora and fauna, despite that being the side where almost all of the Twi'lek resided. Because it says, in fact, the only Twi'leks in the Brightland were those sent to die, because that side was so uninhabitable. But that's kind of the side we see. Like, it looks kind of like deserty and bland and everything like that. But that's the side where everyone lives.
That one's just kind of sad to me, because I don't know if you guys agree, but about sci-fi, a lot of the time, because we don't know what other habitable planets look like, and we're kind of limited in our understanding of the universe, people will just they'll make the desert planet, the sea planet, the ice planet, for people to try and do something kind of interesting like that. The old understanding of how Ryloth works, that's really neat. I haven't seen anything like that anywhere else in sci-fi. So to see that replaced with just planet.jpg, that's kind of really sad, and I can only assume it was done for convenience.
I guess so, but it really kind of cheapens it.
Yeah.
Takes away some of the creativity, the uniqueness, all that. And it's like, and that's what made Star Wars so rich, right? All these different ideas that were all in the same universe. And then Filoni comes along and just wipes away half of it so that it's convenient.
It's so insulting.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone thought for quite a long time as to how to make a planet like this work. And then their work is just, I don't know, that would be kind of difficult for my arc that I'm writing, so I'm just gonna get rid of it. Okay, thanks. It's really lame. I feel bad for the person who came up with that idea for Ryloth, because I think it's really, really neat. I really like it when sci-fi writers go a bit above and beyond in terms of how they construct planets, because we're so prone to just making them single biome or single thing. This is the factory planet. Coruscant is the city planet. Dathomir is the desert planet.
Yeah, true.
And I mean, each of those, in their own way, is really interesting as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But I absolutely agree with you that doing something that's different from that adds to it again. Because
planets are really big. You can get very creative with them.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it's difficult.
It is difficult. I'm trying to figure out my own world, because in my story they kind of traverse most of it, and I'm just like, okay, how does planeting work?
That's a lot of space, huh? You run into that sort of thought, right?
And all the different biomes and flora and fauna that you'll find in those places, and how people survive in different, environments and things like that, and the cultures that would spring up from the unique areas that people live, and what they're able to do to survive themselves, but also establish trade with other areas and things like that. It's like, this is a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I maybe came across as like very demanding sci-fi writers, because I do understand why things are the way they are, because it's really hard to think about all of that space and all of that stuff that can be on a planet, and there's so many different considerations for how and why a planet would be the way that it is. I get it. I understand how we end up with the forest planet and the city planet. But because of that, I want to praise it when writers go a bit above and beyond. Like clearly the person who designed Ryloth did, only to just get their work deleted because it was inconvenient in terms of putting together something for an animated series, I guess.
Dathomir apparently as well, it says here, it was a beautiful and Earth-like planet that had a varied, albeit sometimes deadly, ecosystem. However, in TCW, the planet is instead changed into an odd red hellscape full of dark, spiny forests, jagged rocks, and thick fog across the entire planet.
I guess Filoni was like, oh, this is the planet for the witches? Well, it has to look super creepy. Haha.
Yeah.
It became the Halloween planet.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, this is the evil planet because there's witches on it. Very creative.
Yeah, totally.
Round of applause.
I started clapping. I was like, oh wait, they can't hear me because I'm muted.
Nightsisters in general sort of drive me crazy, because I guess Star Wars just has magic in it now.
Yeah, it's weird.
I remember
their powers are very undefined in the Clone Wars.
I mean, in season 6, Mother Talzin does kind of explain that, they're not using the Force, using dark magic, but it's kind of like, wait, what? I thought the Force was the magic system in this universe.
Exactly. And with this dark magic stuff, you can from galaxies away, or star systems away, potentially just give Dooku some weird illness affliction thing with a ritual. How powerful is Mother Talzin magics up an entire new lower half for Maul, and then magics his PTSD and insanity away. You can do that?
If only it were that easy.
We can only wish. But why is any of this in Star Wars? Star Wars has its magic system already, like you said. We've got the Force, not to say that there can't be, supernatural stuff outside of the Force, but it's really weird to invent something that isn't that.
Yeah, I really need to read some legend stories with the Nightsisters.
It says here that in the EU, the Witches of Dathomir was a catch-all term to include all of the clans, and they list a whole bunch of them. There's gotta be at least 20 of them or more. And all of them, except for the Nightsisters and their offshoot clans, practiced a primarily light-sided philosophy of the Force, which to me says that they were Force users rather than magic users. But I guess Filoni hears witch, and he's like, well, then that means...
They must have a cauldron and do a big spell that, gives a man the pox.
It's flashy magic rather than using
I could be made
Force.
to accept this if it was more adjacent to the Force as I understand it. It doesn't have to be the exact same power set, but things that at least somewhat resemble how the Force has been presented. Because you can make it because of philosophical differences or whatever, they use it a bit differently, or they can do different things with it. I'm happy to accept that, probably, so long as it's done well, but, that's a normal disclaimer for everything. But when they're just magic users with capabilities wildly in excess of something even the strongest Force users can do, it's really, really strange as an inclusion in the universe.
Because, that kind of, in a way, makes her more powerful than Force users. Because they can't, as far as I know, reach across the galaxy to, say, Force choke someone or something.
Well, according to the sequels, they can Force Skype, so...
Oh, true. this is true. But still, Skype is a little bit less powerful than, like, killing someone, I think.
True.
I'm happy to agree with that. Skype is a bit less powerful than killing someone.
Just a bit.
So yeah, it raises this question of, like, are only their species capable of this, or are others capable of learning this, but they just don't for reasons unknown? Like, can you imagine if the Mandalorians got their hands on that? Like, they'd be like, Jedi, done.
Anyone who ever gets bisected again suddenly just gets a robotic lower half.
Yeah, like, why aren't these people, like, selling their services?
Well, Fives was crazy during the Order 66 Chips arc. Imagine one of the witches of Dathomir was there to just magic his insanity away so that he could just explain to Anakin everything that was going on.
It's so OP, and it makes
no sense. Is this a power people can learn? Can anyone else pick this up? Is it?
Yeah.
Is it like a video game racial trait or what?
But speaking of the Mandalorians, that was one of our next points. They were entirely basically a retcon. So it says here, the original Mandalorians were a proud warrior culture with a colorful history and complex warrior society. Karen Traviss fleshed out this in her works, and it was greatly enjoyed by fans, and then TCW came along. And so the Mandalorians were originally marauding raiders that were a little more than barbarians and savages. Then Jaster Muriel came along, developing the Super Commando Codex, which established a moral code for the Mandalorians. He would be opposed by Tor Vizsla, who desired to maintain the unaccountability afforded by their old lifestyle, and so went on to form the Death Watch, and this would lead to the Mandalorian Civil War, in which all of Jaster Muriel's followers, the true Mandalorians, would be wiped out, save his adopted son and apprentice Jango Fett. I think that might be the original version, but in TCW, the only Mandalorians we see are staunch pacifists, and then the Death Watch terrorists. And from what I know, the EU Mandalorians also were, like, from every single race, because as they went through conquering planets, then they would just add people to their ranks. But in TCW, they're all blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white, like,
I know.
Bit
humans. It's just like, what? Why?
Just don't think about it. It's okay.
And that, like, Bo-Katan, it actually just gets all upset when Darth Maul, by their own traditions, takes power, and she's just like, no, you will never be in charge of us.
But he won fair and square.
Yeah.
I don't know what
So, like, people are like, is she just a racist? Like,
Yeah,
what is this?
That's oh god, when you put it that way, that's pretty much the only real conclusion you can draw. She's not happy with a non-Mandalorian being in charge of Mandalore by Mandalore's own customs.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Whereas,
is uncomfortable.
the original Mandalorians would be like, cool, bro.
Yeah, sick, you won. You're really strong and cool. It feels like someone wanted to be really, really subversive by making the Mandalorians all pacifists.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that they understand the concept that subversion goes a bit further than just, hey, these people who up until now have been presented this one way, now they're completely the other thing. You have to go a little bit further than that in order to, like, do something interesting with a subversion. Especially when, this is kind of a weird one, I don't understand what the people of Mandalore want, if you understand what I mean. Because, are they happy under Satine or not? Because when Death Watch starts coming around, and when Maul starts coming around, but Death Watch especially, everyone's cheering about the idea of, being cool Mandalorians who do a big war and whatnot. So, like, were they just begrudgingly following Satine because she was in charge because reasons? Or, I don't know.
Like, it really makes you wonder.
I think Alibi and I have kind of discussed this in our reactions, that it's super confusing what the state of Mandalore was and what kind of a job Satine was doing, because yeah, they're part of this like independent system club thing, and but they don't seem to have any connections. She always goes to the Republic, to the Jedi whenever they need help, rather than to the independent systems. And then, yeah, she's like, oh, everything's great and wonderful because we're at peace. And then meanwhile, Almec's like, no, I've had to turn to the black market in order to keep our people alive.
Yeah.
But then at the same hand, the narrative is framing him as this like, well, no, he was just lying in his own pockets, right? He didn't care about the people either. And so, but either way, it's like, okay, but bad things happening to the people, but then at the same time the people look perfectly fine and they seem perfectly happy under Satine. But then as soon as the Death Watch are like, no, we're gonna be warriors, then everyone's like, yeah, you know what, I like that idea better. It's just like, what the heck is going on?
You have the feeling like you talk to any random Mandalorian on the streets and they will agree with what the last person who spoke to them said or whatever. You know? Like,
yeah, you get that feeling.
it's really, really confusing because they were a warrior society before, so like you'd want to assume that is how things continued to be, but again, they seem perfectly happy under Satine.
Yeah,
so...
they exiled all their warriors to the moon because apparently they couldn't reintegrate them into society, I guess. It's just like, no, you've been following our traditions according to our cultural heritage, and now you're banished.
Yep.
Go fuck yourself for following your traditions, I guess.
We've decided that we're going to do something different now, and obviously you're not welcome.
Yep.
Kind of doesn't paint Satine in the friendliest of lights.
Taint our new order. It's just like,
new order of not just even the normal kind of pacifist. We have stupid pacifists who you'll have someone like pointing a gun at someone. There was I don't remember the season this was in, but the arc ends with like a standoff with Obi-Wan, Satine, and there's the man who's threatening to blow up the entire ship and everyone on it.
Yep.
He's sort of goading Obi-Wan, like, aha, you are a pacifist.
You can't do anything.
Because your girlfriend, who is a pacifist, will be upset. And then Anakin just walks in and kills him without like a second. And they have the goal to play the Imperial March as he does so.
Oh, it's so dumb.
And then he rightfully points out like he was gonna blow up the ship. I'm pretty sure he says that, and they're still just like,
exceedingly rare Anakin W, but like he was completely right.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't do anything wrong there, and the entire moral quandary of the setup was complete nonsense, because I don't think you can find many pacifists out there who would say, no, I just won't defend myself if anyone, tries to harm me or the people I care about.
Satine herself says that earlier in the episode.
So what's going on?
Just because I'm a pacifist doesn't mean I won't defend myself.
But
then she won't defend later.
Again, it's like a first draft where Filoni or whoever was writing for that episode just forgot what had happened earlier on, and then they never read it again, so the connection was never made. Yeah, I have no idea what the Mandalorians want. I have no idea if I should be happy that Death Watch have taken over, or happy that Satine was in charge, or like...
They all suck. They just all suck.
Yeah,
and I know Maul kind of uses Almec as kind of like a figurehead kind of thing while he does stuff behind the scenes, but at the same time, I guess the people wouldn't have accepted Maul either. Would
they not?
I guess not. I don't know. We never get a chance to see what their reaction would have been.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because they use Maul's goons to quote unquote attack the people, and then the Death Watch come in and save the people. And it's supposed to they play it off like, oh yeah, see, we need violent, aggressors in order to protect us. But because they're allies secretly, they're not actually hurting each other. All of the methods they use to restrain the invading criminals is pacifistic.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's non-violent means.
It's non-lethal.
And then they're like, yeah, let's go back to our violent ways.
yeah.
And the people are like, yeah, because you saved us using pacifistic methods.
That's a really good point. I hadn't realized. Yeah, they disable them completely, like non-lethally, as in like these really pacifist sort of methods. I'm sure Satine would have happily like gone along with whatever they were doing. But apparently, yeah, this is somehow the stage we use to go like, yeah, let's go and be violent and like bloodthirsty. How? How did nobody catch this?
Because that's how they get the people to side against Satine, and Satine's like, no, this is bad. They're evil because they're the Death Watch.
Kind of rude, but it's because we're a kids show, so we have to just like, there's the good faction and the bad faction. The goodies and the baddies, and it's gonna be this way because that's simple and nice for children to understand. Every now and then they'll try and break that mold and say, yeah, you see, the independent states aren't that bad, or like, you know, this, that, or the other faction isn't that good or bad. But it always comes off as so tone deaf because of all the stuff around it. And
then like the independent systems like Onderon and Mandalore are made to look like stupid in the end.
Yeah.
So
independence is framed as just as bad as siding with the Separatists, because basically you're just leaving yourself vulnerable to the Separatists, who are pure evil, and so then they will come take advantage. You need the good Republic, you need to side with them, be a part of them in order to be good. It's just like, really? We're doing so great, guys. Nuance.
Fantastic.
Oh. So the last point we have is Mortis.
Yep.
Oh, Mortis.
I don't even know where to begin with Mortis.
I guess I can start with the thing that annoys me the most about Mortis, because it annoys me about so much other Star Wars content, which is Mortis, of course, has, what are they? The father, the brother, and the sister. You know, there's the light side embodiment, the dark side embodiment, and then the neutral one, who is like above them both, who seems to be representative of balance, which means that the show has drunk the Kool-Aid of balance being the dark side and the light side in harmony, when that's never how things were in the original trilogy. The dark side was specifically the force out of balance, and there wasn't really a light side to speak of. The light side was just the force in balance.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense to me personally, because I think I kind of said this in our reaction series, that it's like, it doesn't make sense to me that more good would be a bad thing.
Yeah, it comes across as so weird when you look at the brother and how he's designed visually, or you look at Palpatine and how he's designed visually, and you go, you know what? The world needs a little bit of these guys.
Yeah!
It's necessary for balance, because reasons, as opposed to just, you know, if people weren't abusing the life force of the entire galaxy, the energy field that surrounds and binds like everything, then things would be better, which is basically just what the OT is. Things are good when you are like mindful of your emotions and you're in control of yourself and you're in balance with the world around you. It's really like basic stuff that got changed into some weird and bad yin-yang thing, which is made even stranger by, I remember the arc Mortis ends with the conclusion that Anakin has brought balance to the planet by killing everyone. Yeah.
Yes!
by killing everyone.
It's so messed up. They kill all of these beings that are said to be like the only of their kind, and then it's like, yep, you did a good job. Move on.
Congratulations, you've restored balance.
Why didn't we get the Zillo Beast ending where it's like, oh, this is a tragedy that like the last of this creature's kind has been wiped out now? No, it's like, good job, you've brought balance. You are so strong, chosen one. Yes, good. It's like, move on.
Fantastic work and all that. What are the Mortis people, man? Like,
I have no idea.
Because I don't think they're actually like embodiments of each of the aspects of the Force, right? But they sure seem to be.
Yeah, I think that that's implied to be what they are. That they're like basically deities of the Force.
from
They're
And
all
then
dead
they
now.
kills them.
And what does their existence imply? The Force has like conscious, quote unquote, gods of each of its various like aspects.
From what I heard, like the father, son, and daughter were like connected back when Legends wasn't Legends, it hadn't been decanonized. They were all connected to like Abeloth somehow, and like you think of the implications of that. Like Abeloth was one of the most terrifying evil entities to ever exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just 3 more of her just out there
Chilling.
because they appear in that one episode and there's
Yep.
absolutely no consequences for anything that happens there moving forward. So it's like, do these people just kind of live in a bubble and they pulled Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka into that bubble? So like it feels like it's almost happening in a parallel dimension or something. It just feels...
Because when they get back, it's like, oh, you were only gone for like a second, and meanwhile they've been gone for like a few days.
Yeah, it's not explained at all.
It's Narnia!
Narnia.
Huge fan fiction vibes, because someone in the
Yeah.
writing room was like, hey, what if we made Anakin like find out all of the stuff that he's gonna do? Wouldn't that be cool? And if we could have like Obi-Wan talk to Qui-Gon or something, you know? Wouldn't that be awesome? And then they tried to think of a way to engineer that, and somehow they came up with like Force avatars. I really don't know how to explain any further how like unbelievable it is that they even exist. Like the brother, the father, and the sister. Like
Mm-hmm.
I will say that like the planet design itself, how it like as it goes through the day, it kind of goes through the seasons as well, and it's just kind of weird and crazy. Like I do like that aspect of it. It's kind of a really cool planet idea.
yeah.
But then, yeah, it's just kind of like, well, I'm glad we'll never get to see that ever again because the planet just doesn't actually exist. It's actually this weird, like, trapezoid thing. I don't know my shapes very well, but, like, it's just this weird, floaty, pyramid-y thing that's there, but not there, but...
And then you look at Rebels, and there's the implication that these 3 Force beings, whatever they are somehow connected to the world between worlds.
Oh yes.
What does that even mean?
It means Filoni's just doing whatever he wants.
Everything connected to those 3 is just utter poison. So I wouldn't be surprised. Well, they're not going to because they really like some of the things they've set up, but I feel like a reasonable writer just looks at everything Mortis and everything World Between Worlds and just goes, I'm not touching any of that with a barge pole because I can't go anywhere near it without inviting just an unbelievable deluge of questions that I can't answer.
That would be the logical response. But as far as I know, the Ahsoka show is just gonna hop right back into the World Between Worlds and just play in that sandbox, because then he can have
The
his
multiverse.
OC in more super important events.
Yeah, you can use it to
Star
like,
Wars world.
what if in this parallel universe, like, I don't know, Ahsoka was Obi-Wan's master or whatever?
Well, they're gonna have her fighting Anakin on Mustafar.
Yeah.
Yep,
in
that's the
Obi-Wan's
one I
place.
heard, which is
Like, that is just straight up fan fiction. There is no other way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone's just like, yay, canon! This is great! Ahsoka's amazing! We love
if-
Dave Filoni. He's gonna save Star Wars.
Oh my goodness.
What if my cool OC was the one who fought the ultimate bad guy in like the climactic battle? Not, you know, Obi-Wan, the person who was supposedly his friend. I know we didn't see much of it, but those 2 were supposed to have... I mean, they already do a thing in Rebels where they try and imply Ahsoka is quite highly responsible for why Anakin fell to the dark side. Because, like, her leaving, like, really shook him.
There's so many YouTube videos that, like, delve into that and are like, yeah, Ahsoka, she's the reason... Like, her leaving the Jedi because the Jedi betrayed her, like, that's what got the ball rolling for Anakin to fall to the dark side. What are you talking about? His you know, mother
fuck
and
Padme,
his
I
wife?
guess.
Like, what
Yeah.
the heck? It's just
Padme
like,
doesn't
she is
matter.
just
She's just
unimportant.
there.
Yeah, like, Mortis leaves me kind of lost for words that they thought this was an okay thing to put into the universe.
Yeah.
At the very least, they had the foresight to make it really, really closed off. In that, it's just one isolated thing, and then we
But
never
they bring
go there
it up
ever again.
in
Yep.
season 6. So it's
And-
like, no, this is a thing that happened, and those who were involved not only remembered the events, except for, Anakin's memory of the foresight was erased. That's the only thing that was erased.
Yep.
And then they told the council about it, because Yoda's like, oh yeah, hey, remember that thing you told us about? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like, wait, why? Why are you coming back to this?
Shouldn't this revolutionize their understanding of the Force forever?
You would think.
Exactly.
The Force is energy field that surrounds and binds and whatever all living things. Except now apparently there's Force avatars living on this remote planet. How do we reconcile that with how we think
Oh,
the
there
Force
were,
works?
and then you guys killed them.
Oh.
Good job.
What effect has you having killed them gonna have, guys? Does our Force magic still work? Because that's an easy thing you might initially think, right? If you hear about all of this, like, okay, so there was Force gods and you killed them. So does the Force still work?
And then actually, come to think of it, in Revenge of the Sith, they're like, hey, well, our powers are kind of diminishing. You don't think they'd have been like, wait, is this maybe connected to that?
Did you guys ruin everything forever? Hold on.
Oh, you'd think the Jedi Order would be burning these guys at the stake. Like, what have you done?
There should at least be a pretty hefty degree of suspicion as to whether or not, you just killed them, all 3 of them. Really? That should be low marks for all 3 of those of Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Anakin.
Yup.
Especially since Anakin's already kind of untrustworthy.
Yeah, exactly.
The untrustworthy Anakin got, a Padawan who's just like him, but that's an issue everyone's talked about, so...
Oh, yeah. And it's another retcon, so there you go. Ahsoka is just her own category of retcon.
We just wanted to have things to be a certain way, and I guess we didn't really care about how we got there. Which you kind of do need to care about how you get there, because you're beholden to that information down the line. Unless I don't know, I guess Dave Filoni's just a Giga Chad and he just keeps ignoring the things that have been written before, even some of the things he's written.
The fact that he made Sabine Force sensitive just says it all.
No. Fantastic.
Yeah. I'm really wondering how this, Ahsoka show is going to play out. Are people going to be like, what the heck is this? Or are they just mostly going to be like, Ahsoka's still so awesome! Woohoo!
Star Wars is burning goodwill faster than it has in the past, so I'm hoping maybe this show will snap people out of it a bit, or
yeah, fingers
make them-
crossed.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you
Make
go.
them up and be like, hey, this character isn't actually cool. You can't really describe many aspects of her that are consistent or interesting.
I am at least happy that if people start to question Ahsoka, then our little channel there with all of our deep dives into her character are there to say, no, she was never good. It's not that she's become bad. She was always bad.
A very, very perfect set of references there to point anyone to. It's like, man, I miss the old Ahsoka. Oh, do you now?
Whoa, well, let's have a little chat, shall we?
Because that is what a lot of people say, oh, she was so great in the Clone Wars, but then Disney ruined her.
Yep, I hear that one a lot.
Yeah.
Which, I don't really get it. She's kind of the same character throughout.
Well, she doesn't even have a character. She was a plot device from the beginning, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, she's whatever the plot needs her to be at that time.
I remember when I was watching through the show for the first time with my friends, basically joking around about how the formula for the first 3 seasons, at least, is Ahsoka having a character trait just sort of implanted on her so that she can learn a lesson about it at the end of that episode or arc.
Yeah.
She needs to be all impulsive so she can learn a lesson about being impulsive, so on and so forth.
The best part is that she doesn't even learn the lesson. It's not like she's not impulsive later because she's learned not to.
Yes.
She's just always this kind of vague, like, brat. But she leans into certain traits so that she can unlearn them, and they just go back to their vague level. But they are still very much there.
Yeah, she's not progressed at all, really, as a character. And I've seen people say, like, they'll post a screenshot of Ahsoka from the start of the series and at the end of the series, and be like, man, look how far this character has come. It's like, all it's changed is she's left the Jedi Order.
And she got a new character design. Wow, that equates to character growth, obviously.
I'm really curious to see what she's like in Rebels, because Alibi's original thoughts was that she was different. Alibi actually said that she had become bland. Like, Alibi was like, oh, they took away everything that made her character fun, and now she's just like this, like, bland person. But yeah, I'm curious to see if she's really just more of the same, but maybe it's just, that toned down kind of level, or if she is kind of a completely different character all of a sudden because she's being whatever Rebels needs her to be. But yeah, like in The Mandalorian, she's definitely her same old self. She's lying and manipulative and doesn't actually care about people, and
she's always right.
And she's always right, and it's just because there's so much of her across so much Star Wars now. It's just like exhausting.
Yeah.
She's in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a reason people will like talk about her as the main character of Star Wars, because it was a joke for a while. I'm pretty sure that's what Filoni wants. She's been everywhere and seen everyone. She knows everyone. She was there for everything.
Yeah. And they shove her into Padme's funeral, just like, oh yeah, she was totally there.
Like, the list of important characters she hasn't met, it's like Han Solo.
Oh, I'm sure she's met him too. Probably bumped into him in a bar somewhere.
Yeah,
and
I can't wait for that story where she taught him how to be a better smuggler or something somehow.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, probably. Because, she did such a great job with the Mortis sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So now she knows what's what. Oh, goodness. But, I mean, things like when they gave her Thrawn's strategy, right, from Heir to the Empire. And it's like, well, no, actually, Ahsoka came up with that. Thrawn was just copying her. It's like, are you, what?
It's just so petulant as a writing thing. Like, look, my character did all of the cool things. If it was cool and it was done in this universe, she's done it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Remember when she was sent to teach the Mandalorian youth, and instead she just radicalized them?
and then Satine thanks her at the end. Oh, thank you so much for coming to help us. We couldn't have done it without you.
Thank you for encouraging our children to run around spying on officials and whatnot constantly.
And then next time you see Corky in like season 5, then he's just like running around with a gun, and Satine's just like, yep, okay.
Yep. Fantastic.
Like, not even a single like shake of the head, even after she, wouldn't stop ragging on Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Oh, you call yourself a peacekeeper, but you punch people who are trying to kill you. Oh.
I hate
Oh
Satine.
my goodness. Really, Satine.
She's such a... yeah, there's nothing more to say. I really don't like Satine either. Caricature pacifist.
Oh, yeah. So bad. Okay, it's we've actually done pretty well. We've gotten through all of our points in about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was actually
Very
so
nice. Yeah, make
Look
good
at
time.
us. Give yourself a pat on the back, everyone.
Give a round of applause, but like blow out the mic. Woohoo!
So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Theo. Like, this has been really fun. And Alibi and I were just saying the other day, like, did you ever imagine that we would ever get to sit down and have a discussion with someone from EFAP? And it was like, no, never in a million years did I think that would happen.
Honestly, thank you guys. This has been like really, really fun to sit down and chat.
We
Congratulations
were
on the
shocked
500.
Thank you. When because Alibi sent me the link to when you had your little anti-TCW rant on EFAP.
Yeah.
I just kind of listened to that bit, and yeah, I was surprised that like some of the people in the comments were agreeing with you. I was not surprised that most of them were like, "What?
Yeah.
How dare you? No, you're wrong." But yeah, no, it was cool. I was like, "Yay!"
That show.
Alone.
That show got to have such a good pass for so long in the EFAP Discord. For a long time, it was like fairly uncontroversially seen as just like a pretty good show, if I'm remembering right, other than by a few people. And it took a lot of fist fighting in the verbal sense to slowly but surely change that sentiment. I remember I bashed the prequels a lot when I go on EFAP, and people kept telling me, watch the Clone Wars because it fixes all of the stuff you're talking about.
Right,
And
yeah.
I get to come back and say, no, actually, it makes all of it worse.
On the contrary.
Every single issue I've raised, it makes worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the prequels are by no means perfect. They're very flawed. I still do like them, but I'm also more of a casual Star Wars fan, which is why I only know the EU really through hearsay. I'd love to sit down and read some of the books or more of the comics eventually, but my children have to grow up a little bit more first before I have time for that.
Gotta give it a minute.
Yeah,
Just
a
quick
few
minute.
minutes. But yeah, so thank you again for sitting down and taking the time to join us and say hi to the rest of the EFAP game, because I know that's the only way I'm ever going to speak to them is just sending a hi through you.
I'm probably gonna show the Ahsoka Mary Sue video to them. Like, I'm probably gonna throw it their way. So I think they'd like it.
Okay. Well,
Right.
I'm gonna go. I don't know if you and Alibi want to talk any more about anything, but I should be heading out. So.
I've gotta hop off in a hurry to go and watch Ahsoka with them.
Oh,
Oh, the
Yeah.
suffering.
No rest for the wicked.
my
Yeah.
condolences for your sanity.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. And
Okay.
We should do this again sometime.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I'd be down.
There you go. There's lots more to talk about when it comes to TCW.
Absolutely. So many problems.
All right, I'm heading out. Bye.
Bye bye. Have a good rest of the day. Bye bye.
Bye.